This is BBC One. Now the 9 o'clock news with Peter Sissons.
Jilly Dando, known and loved by millions, has been brutally murdered. The 37-year-old presenter died in hospital after being found shot through the head on her own doorstep. Tonight in West London, a massive police hunt for the well-dressed man seen running away down the street in which she lived. Also, is Belgrade beginning to crack? The Deputy Premier says again a NATO force in Kosovo could be part of a peace deal. Good evening. A massive police hunt is underway tonight in West London for the killer of Jilly Dando, who was murdered earlier today outside her terraced home in Fulham. Police said tonight she died from a single shot to the head. Neighbours who found her dying on her doorstep had heard a scream and seen a well-dressed man hurrying away down the street. The shocking loss of one of Britain's best-known personalities drew many tributes, among them from the Queen and the Prime Minister. Our chief news correspondent, Kate Adie, reports.
It's a quiet, pretty avenue in southwest London, where Jilly Dando had lived for several years. Shortly before midday, some of her neighbours were alerted that something was wrong. Two women went towards the front door and saw someone lying on the doorstep. A third neighbour joined them.
I heard the scream.
You heard her scream?
I did hear a scream.
Did you hear a man's voice or anything
No,
like that?
no man's voice at all.
And did you hear a shot or did you...
There was no shots. That's what I would say was a shot. I wouldn't have thought there was a shot, no.
From your assessment, what appeared to have happened to her?
She was obviously attacked, and whether she was attacked with a knife or whether she was attacked with some sort of instrument, but she certainly... She is obviously very shocked what happened, and...
But she was conscious, she was talking?
She wasn't conscious when I saw her.
And what did you do, dial 999 straight away?
I personally didn't, but the people I was with, the two ladies who also live in the street, dialed the number and had the ambulance services there within 10 minutes.
Taken by ambulance to Charing Cross Hospital, she remained unconscious, having suffered serious head injuries.
Jilly Dando arrived here by ambulance at 12:30 p.m. Despite all efforts by hospital paramedics, ambulance paramedics and hospital medical staff, she was certified dead at 1:03 p.m.
Several people saw a man near the house at the time, saying he was walking briskly, possibly running away.
A man was seen leaving from outside number 29 Gowan Avenue, and he ran east down this road towards the Fulham Palace Road. A man between late 30s and 40s, white, he was carrying a mobile phone, he was clean shaven and he had dark hair. The witnesses describe him as being well groomed, possibly wearing a jacket or a suit. And anybody who knows that man or anybody else who saw that person out there, we would like to speak to.
The street has been sealed off all day, with a police investigation launched into the death of someone known to millions of people through television, whose neighbours knew her, and who was an outgoing, friendly person, modest about her celebrity. Like many in the public eye, there were reports that she'd attracted unwanted attention from strangers. And last year she'd had difficulty when a particularly persistent viewer pursued her with calls and letters. Something the BBC took seriously, the problem of stalking being one of the consequences of success. However, Jill was hugely popular and cooperated happily with the press, most recently giving interviews about her forthcoming marriage to gynecologist Alan Farthing. Over Easter, they'd both been with her father and brother in the West Country.
As far as my dad's concerned, I mean, she was a devoted daughter and, for me, a sort of loving sister. Well, I mean, we're going to miss her, obviously, dreadfully. And I think people who knew her in a way through her appearances on TV, they're obviously going to miss her greatly.
The first of many tributes came from her colleagues at the BBC, where she was held in great affection. In the last hour, the police have confirmed she was killed by a single gunshot to the head. It's rare that a reporter can say that a murder victim was the kind of woman who had no enemies. I can say that about Jilly Dando. Her death is a shock to all who knew her personally, and also to millions of people who knew her as a friendly, charming person on television. Kate Adie, BBC News, Fulham.
The Queen said she was shocked and saddened by the news. The BBC's Director General, Sir John BIRT, said Jill was one of the nation's sweethearts. Tonight, Jill's fiancé, medical consultant Alan Farthing, gave this statement to the 9 o'clock news. "I am totally devastated and unable to comprehend what has happened. Jill was respected for her professional abilities, admired by all who met her and adored by anyone who got to know her." Michael Burke reports on Jill's career, which, although it fulfilled a dream, never lifted her feet from the ground.
Hello, welcome to the Antiques Inspectors, the show where the top...
Jill Dando was possibly the most popular woman on British television. She was certainly the busiest. A new series began only last night. Her unaffected glamour, easy professionalism, radiant good nature, lighting up the Antiques Inspectors. The front cover of Radio Times this week, again. The fame she carried so naturally, greater than ever. The fame that almost certainly killed her. She was born in Weston-super-Mare 37 years ago, a solid Christian family. Jill Wendy Dando was a child of Middle England. She thought she was an ugly little girl, buck teeth, glasses, no dress sense, she said. Contact lenses and a perm at 16 changed all that.
I have to be honest, the sea here is never blue, it's not even green.
But even when she returned to Weston for the holiday programme as a glamorous television star, you felt she never quite believed how beautiful and how successful she was. Her modesty was more than good manners. A modest start there, teenage reporter doing garden fetes for the Western Mercury.
Ah, this brings back memories. I had my first job on this paper. 30 years ago, a computer capable of similar calculations...
The girl reporter graduated naturally to local television. The camera loved her, even before she wore the gloss of stardom.
Jill was working at the time for the local paper in Weston-super-Mare. She applied for the job, and it was obvious from the first time I met her that day back in the mid-1980s that she was a tremendously talented person. She was a lovely person to deal with, and I just knew she'd go far.
The move to London, to the BBC's breakfast programme, showed she had authority as well as charm, could handle the big stories.
Breakfast news from the BBC. There's one story this morning, the dramatic end of the Gorbachev era in the Soviet Union.
But it's the holiday programme that we'll remember. The gorgeous girl next door, freed from the straitjacket of news, on permanent vacation.
Some say that the brochure price of a holiday...
It looked the easiest and most fun job in the world. But that was her special talent. The crushing schedule, the endless travelling, never showed. It did give her one special moment, a surprise date with the star that she'd always admired. Crime Watch was an altogether grittier programme. She had a serious side, a natural empathy with the victims, calm authority with the audience looking for criminals.
So your calls really do count as a result. And
what you saw was what you got with Jill. Her public and her private persona were one and the same thing. Her warmth wasn't feigned, it was real.
Her career was always successful, her private life less so. But after several Mr. Wrongs, she'd found Mr. Right, a gynaecologist, Alan Farthing. They were getting married in the autumn.
She was phenomenally happy in that relationship. I was well aware before I introduced them how compatible I thought they'd be, and it's very sad to think that they won't be going through the wedding after all this.
But a golden career and those hopes of future happiness ended bloodily just before midday. A terrible price to pay for being lovely and famous. A terrible shock for you and me, who knew her. Michael Burke, BBC News.
And there's a special tribute programme to Jill on BBC One immediately after this news. By Clarence Mitchell. Clarence, we now know Jill was shot and not stabbed as thought initially, but have the police said anything more?
That's right, Peter. Yes, no, other than the simple statement arising out of the post-mortem results that Jill was killed, as you say, by a single gunshot to the head, and that she died of a brain injury caused by a single bullet. There had been concern mid-afternoon after reports that a man had been seen acting suspiciously on Putney Bridge, quite close to here, whether or not he jumped into the Thames, as one report said, or simply was in the area. The police had to take those reports seriously as possibly being connected, maybe not. They sealed off the area. They did recover, we're told, a knife of some description, but from a nearby park, but we're now told that has been ruled out as in any way connected with the killing of Jill. As you've said, clearly she was shot. A gun was involved, and since then the police forensic examination of the scene here at her home has continued. Well, it's now some 10 hours, nearly 10 hours since she was shot, and if you can see further down the road in the darkness, the tented area that the police have created over her front garden, the front of her house. There are forensic investigation officers in there taking photographs still, and that work is going to be continuing for some time yet. Her whole road remains sealed off. We're told the police will be issuing more information at Scotland Yard in the morning, but for now this has been one of the saddest reporting jobs that I've had to fulfill in many a long time. I knew Jill well, and it really is heartbreaking to report on the murder of a colleague like this.
Clarence Mitchell, thank you. And that's the main news tonight, the brutal killing that today stunned everyone here at the BBC Television Centre. At the age of 37, in her prime as the nation's most popular presenter and radiantly looking forward to marriage in the autumn, Jill Dando was shot down by an attacker outside her home not 2 miles from here. A senseless murder that leaves this newsroom in which she worked a darker place and makes a lot poorer the medium which she graced. Good night.